Good to see everybody here. And I was talking with my daughter on the way over here and telling her that, it's just difficult for some people to get here to wear a mask and worship. It's no fun to wear one, but thankful for those of y'all who are here and participating. And I realized this week there's only 3 times that the mask really bothers me. One is if I'm wearing my glasses and it fogs up my glasses. 2 is in those moments where I sneeze because it's just yucky. And then 3rd is like when I have to wear one in public. I don't like it. So that's my easy joke for the day. All right. And we are continuing on in a sermon series called Indestructible Life. And over the past 2 weeks, I shared with you that in order for us to have the life that not only endures and survives, but also thrives and is abundant and blessed, that Jesus taught his disciples that the best way to build an indestructible life is to free up our hearts of those things that can potentially destroy us, those things that corrupt our hearts, that keep us from living the life that he wants us to live. And last couple weeks, we talked about greed. We talked about how power can also be a problem for us. And today we're going to cover one more, and then next week we'll talk about how Jesus says, and here's how you begin to cement this, how to make this a continual thing in your life. And we'll talk about that next week. But today, one more piece of it, and that we're going to look at what needs to come out of our hearts, what needs to be removed, and as Jesus said, how to guard against this particular thing and watch for it, because it is just as dangerous as other things that you and I would name for people's lives. And when we look at it, we would say greed's kind of hard to see, that when we talk about power, we would probably say, but then there's some good things that could be done with power. And then today we're going to look at jealousy. And jealousy is not something that you and I tend to talk about much when we're adults, because we usually think of jealousy as something that happens with little kids, right? When somebody sees that they have a better bicycle than the other kid does, they get mad. Or if a parent gives one child something better than what they give the other kid, that causes jealousy. But we always think about it as a little kid problem. Or if we catch an adult that's jealous, what do we do? I mean, what's the gracious, therapeutic, wonderful thing that we tell people that we recognize they're jealous? What do we do for them? We tell them to just get over it, right? I mean, we're pretty straightforward on that. We don't give it much thought. We're just like, get over it. Just move on. But Jesus recognized that it was more of a complex problem than what you and I give it credit to be. So did Bertrand Russell. In his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, he said, here are 4 things that motivate our behaviors, that cause us to do different things. And he named the acquisition of goods, of necessary things in our lives, or things that we find valuable that we want to hold on to or hoard. That was one thing he named as the desire. The second was power. He said power is another thing, and it's one of those things that we get a taste of it. We just want more and more of it, right? And then third one he named as rivalry, which is a really nice way to put it. Rivalry. It gives you an idea of competition, bringing out the best in each other. But when it came down to other arenas of our life, other than sports or things like that, Jesus had a different word for rivalry, which was jealousy. We talk about it in the Bible as coveting, desiring, wanting what other people have, right? And that we don't have. And it seems so simple, but man, we have an intricate web and an odd relationship with jealousy in a variety of ways. I mean, you think about the subtle ways that we tend to reveal jealousy in our lives, just the subtle ways, right? Like if we have somebody in our lives and we think to ourselves, they are so smart, they are so knowledgeable. What do we tell our friends? Yeah, they're just a little too smart for their own good, right? Yeah, good, y'all are with me. The first crowd wouldn't own up to any of this, right? And not only that, or you ever have somebody, we have a friend or somebody we know that's just incredibly physically gifted. They're just beautiful. And what do we tell our friends? Oh, they're just a little too pretty, right? Just too perfect. Little bordering on fake or plastic. You're just too pretty, too good. Or, how are some other ways that we reveal that kind of jealousy? We say, well, yeah, I mean, of course they sell all that. They're such great salespeople. If I looked that good, I could sell that much too, right? Or, any of the other passive-aggressive Southern ways that we name our jealousy, right? That we just pick up whatever that attribute is and we say, sure, but it's just too much, And I know, it's other people that have that problem, right? Not y'all, not us. But just to go ahead and push toward that reality, have you ever had your jealousy or known somebody that was jealous of somebody else to the point where it causes problems in their relationship with that person? They're jealous or you're jealous and you think, man, if I had that kind of money, I wouldn't spend it that way. And rather than telling that person that, you just kind of act it out in a variety of ways that causes problems in your relationship with them or whatever it is that or you think to yourself, man, if I had that advantage or if I had that gift or I had that ability or if God had given me that opportunity instead of them, then things would be different. And it causes all kinds of friction in your relationship with that person. Whether you ever name it or say it or anything like that, it just keeps on coming up over and over again. You undermine them. You do all kinds of things that causes problems in your relationship with them. And Jesus, of course, said, that's not good. That doesn't work toward a peaceable place to be, or that doesn't gain us any kind of fellowship with people. And here, let me show you like the really nasty underbelly of jealousy. It's just icky, and I'm not suggesting any of y'all have ever done this, but has there ever been somebody in your life where good and well, you think they're smarter, they've got more opportunities, and if I had what they had, or if God had given me what they did, then I would have gotten the promotion, or I would have been in a more successful place than I am right now. And then something happens, right? And it's something, maybe it's something tragic, right? They lose that house, right, that you always wanted to have, or maybe the boss goes into their office and just chews them up, and you think, well, it just must be nice to have that promotion now, right? Or something unfortunate happens to them to where you think in your mind they've been taken down a few notches, right? And the ugly side of jealousy is what happens. You begin to think to yourself, well, now they're a little bit more relatable. I ought to have a meal with them now that they've been taken down a few notches, right? Not y'all, other people, right? And there are specific ways in which Jesus addresses jealousy, but rather than keep along on this path that I'm going down, and we'd cover greed, we'd cover power, we could cover jealousy, and next week I could just keep open up cans of worms. I just want to share with you like one of the master tools that's found in the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to use this to not only address jealousy, but I believe it'll open up your eyes to seeing how you could tackle a number of other things that might be in your heart. So let's look at Matthew chapter 6. And this is a passage you've heard before. And we usually use it to talk about things like greed or money, but it really reveals a way in which Jesus speaks specifically to anything that's corrupting our heart or enslaves our heart or owns us. He says, stop collecting treasures for your own benefit on earth where moth and rust eat them and where the thieves break in and steal them. Instead, collect treasures for yourselves in heaven where moth and rust don't eat them and where thieves don't break in and steal them. And then he says in verse 21, and this is the tool you can use to leverage and change and shape your life and your heart in amazing ways. It says, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And like I said, this not only tackles jealousy because If you treasure, if you covet, if you long for, sigh for what your neighbor has, that's going to cause all kinds of problems, right? But there's a part of it that works at a deeper level. And there's a guy named Dallas Willard who gives an eloquent way to talk about this. He says, each of us has within our hearts a treasury. Each of us has within our hearts a treasury where we keep what is most valuable to us close. Each of us has a treasury where we keep what is most valuable to us close, right? And if you're a visual person, maybe you can picture the room of your heart and what you would have on display, what you would show, what would be there, right? What would you have there? And you would say, this is what I treasure most. You know, what's on the wall? You got pictures of your kid, you got pictures of your boat, your bike. Well, what do you got on the walls? What's taking those things up, you know? I mean, I keep thinking about that image, and for me, it keeps coming back to Harry Potter, the room of requirement, right? There's this massive mess that's there in the treasury of my heart. Things that I've held on to or kept or said, these are most valuable, and my relationship with God just keeps on pulling junk out and replacing it with good things. And Dallas Willard points out, and he says, you know, that treasury part of our hearts and our lives, well, if we're going to have a spouse or somebody that's close to us, part of that relationship, part of how all that works out is that I reveal what's there to my spouse or my closest friends, and I get a glimpse of what they have in their heart. You know, that's what builds trust. That's what builds relationships. And sometimes when you get a glimpse into the heart or the treasury of somebody, it's real pronounced. You know, if they have a particular thing that's important to them, you know, if they are bicyclists, they're going to have their bicycle up on the wall. They're going to have pictures of their bike at work. They're going to have the center of their living room is going to have their bicycle. And then sometimes it's a little bit more subtle, right? I mean, have you ever had a friend or a neighbor or somebody that you thought you knew, and then you suddenly got a glimpse into what they actually treasure? And you go, wow, I never knew that about you. You know, sometimes they desire things that you never thought was on their list. You know, so what's in your treasury? You know, is it relationships? Is it friends? Is it wealth? Is it power? Is it jealousy? You know, people have all sorts of things there. You know, whatever their collection is, whether it's bicycles or exotic birds like toucans and parakeets and things like that, or whatever the case might be. You know, what's in that? The treasury of your heart. And Jesus would push back and he would say, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And isn't that true? I mean, where do you have the easiest amount of time or easiest way of spending money, time, and effort in your life? Usually it's on those things that you treasure the most. What you truly treasure the most is where you're going to spend your money, time, and energy of your life. That's what you're going to give easily to. You know, you might be extremely tight in one area of your life with your money and your time, but when it comes to those things that you actually treasure or those people that you actually treasure, you just give in abundance. You just give freely. It just all goes away, right? And this is what Jesus is pointing out. And if you really get this, it will really open up your eyes to why you do what you do, why you keep making some mistakes over and over again, because you have deep within you a desire for something that you're not naming or you're not being honest about. I mean, it's amazing when people really grasp and really see that, you know, I say this one thing, but I deeply desire this, and where my desires are, that's where my destiny is going to be. That's the direction my life's going to take. That's what's going to cause me to do certain things when I really get a handle and an idea of why it is I treasure that, why I want that so badly. Usually there's a story. Usually there's a hurt that you need to let God begin to work on. And so he eloquently nails it, you know, whether it's greed or envy or whatever. He says, you know, what is it you treasure in your heart? Because that's where you're going to spend your time, effort, and energy the most. And you know the negatives of this. You know, if money is your greatest treasure, you're always going to feel like you don't have enough. If power is what you greatly treasure the most, then you're always going to feel like you are fragile or weak. If intellect is what you treasure and value the most, you're always going to feel like a fraud and that you don't know enough, right? And on down the list, we know the problems that it causes, but are you willing to let God address them and speak to them and heal them? Now, here's the thing. Most of the time, when we think of something like jealousy, we tend to think about it in terms of what other people have. And we think of that as the problem. You know? That we tend to think if this person in my life, this sibling or this coworker or this neighbor, if God hadn't given them that, then I wouldn't have this problem. Or if God had given me the opportunity that they had, or had made things easier, or given me that person in my life that could have directed me the way they had a mentor, or whatever the case is, we tend to think outside and we tend to think that's the problem, that's the thing, that's the issue. But really, when it all comes down to it, what are we saying? It's not that we're mad at our neighbor. If we really boiled it down, it's not that we're mad at our sibling. It's not even that person who got the job because they knew somebody whose uncle was there. You know, that's not even it. It all comes down to God. And if you want to know why people are disappointed or discouraged or don't show up to church, it usually relates to them looking to the heavens and going, why don't I have what they have? Why didn't you give me what you gave them? It's a God issue. And they get hurt, and they get bitter, and they get angry. And all along the way, they miss everything that Jesus had to teach and that Jesus gave his life for. Because you think about the example Jesus gives and what he does for us. We're talking about God giving his only son into the world to be born in a manger, a carpenter's kid, no power, penniless, even though he's the Son of God, that he comes into the world, gives away all the power, all the wealth, or whatever you want to name, all that is given up. And why? Why? Why would he do that? Or to suffer on the cross? Is it anything other that he treasured something far greater than we ever imagined? That there was something so valuable and so priceless and such great worth that he would surrender all those things and suffer for what he did, suffer so painlessly. Because you and I are treasured. And when we know how treasured we are, how much God loves us, then the inventory of our treasury can begin to change. Then it can be remodeled. Then our hearts can be renovated. Until that time, if we're still holding on to why God didn't do this for us, why didn't God give us this ability, why didn't God give me what my brother got or my sister got or all those other things, we miss out on what God is giving us, what God has blessed us with, and what God has told us about our worth and our value and how much we are treasured by him. God doesn't owe us. God has given everything for us. Colossians 1:5 says, you have this faith and love because of hope stored for you in heaven. You have this faith and love because of hope stored for you in heaven. That rather than giving us earthly things or focusing here, God has promised us. He said, you just live your life knowing that I am building up for you treasure in heaven. Or 1 Peter 2:9 says, but you are God's chosen treasure. What's the rest of the verse? A royal priesthood. Sons and daughters of the Lord Most High. That's how treasured we are. Being treasured by God and recognizing God's worth in our lives leads us to have pure hearts, freed from greed, freed from the lust for power, freed from jealousy, freed to worship and to serve and to give all that we are into his service. An indestructible life. So, what can you do with that? The knowledge that you are treasured beyond any worth that this world could possibly imagine. What can you do with that? Well, it's one thing to believe his words, it's another thing to do with it. And so this week, I would encourage you to fix a relationship in your life. Apply it that way. Fix a relationship in your life. Maybe you do have that one person in your life who you're always thinking, they've got unfair advantage, they've got unfair gifts. Why is it that mom always invites them to sit at that place at the table and eat the good food before I have a chance? You know, whatever it might be for you. I have no issues, right? That one relationship in your life where you look at a coworker and you say, why is it that they always seem to come out ahead of me? Use that knowledge to fix that relationship. It may be even best that you go ahead and tell them what's going on. Say, look, it's not your fault, it's my fault. I've been jealous of you. That's what's been the friction. That's been the thing. And I just want you to know, I think you've got great things going on, and that's my problem. Fix that relationship. Here's another way you can use this. When something good happens to them, celebrate it with them. When something good happens to that person that you've been jealous of, celebrate it with him or them. And look, I'll be honest with you. The first time you try this, something good's going to happen in their life. They're going to tell you about it, and you're going to go, yay. Oh, boy. But as time goes on, you'll get better at that. You'll build into that. You'll celebrate with them. You'll be excited for them. And time again, just to push this back onto where it needs to be. I mean, the question of what do we treasure most? It's a worship question. It's a worship question. What do we treasure most is always a worship question. What are we willing to show up for? What are we willing to celebrate? What are we willing to be excited about? What are we willing to tell our friends about? It's always a worship question. What do we truly worship? What do we truly believe to be of greatest worth, of most importance, of highest value? What do we truly believe to be the case there? If we're focused on things of this world, then worship is always going to be frustrating. But if we put our hearts and our lives into worshiping the one true and holy God, worship is always enlivening and exciting and enjoyable and such a wonderful and powerful thing. What do you treasure most? What do you need Jesus' help with when it comes to cleaning out your heart, making it new, and restocking the treasury of your heart? These are hard questions. They're difficult ones. And so get some friends, talk with them about it, go over it with them, and work toward treasuring the kingdom of God together. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Amen.